All right. We want to welcome Amy Milne with the Milne, okay, with the Quilt Alliance. And it's good to have her with us and as part of Stories Behind the Quilt. And we're going to go ahead and ask her to just tell a little bit about herself, the Quilt Alliance, what they do, their purpose. And so, Amy, take it away.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Emily. I've been looking forward to this conversation because I so have enjoyed working with you on our community quilt days in Hazard and leading up to that. And the Quilt Alliance is the organization that I work for. It started out as the Alliance for American Quilts, and we shortened that name to make it a little easier to say, but the idea was started 30 years ago. This is our 30th anniversary as a nonprofit. And the idea was that a lot of the states, including Kentucky, I think Kentucky may have been the first, to do a statewide quilt documentation project, which was to go into communities, kind of like we did, but a little bit more, I guess, academically. So they would go into different communities, invite folks to come and bring their quilts to be documented. They would hang them up on, sometimes as simply as just put them on a clothesline, and take photographs of them, and have those quilt owners say, get down on paper whatever they knew about them. And several states did that. Kentucky amassed a huge collection of data, and many, many other states did it and are still doing it. And that's such a valuable collection of information to have. So that information ultimately was collected into a website that is a huge database called the Quilt Index. So that's a project that the Quilt Alliance was involved in early on. We also, and that's one that Michigan State University now runs and continue to add to. So that is the mission of the Quilt Alliance, which is to document, preserve, and share the history of quilts and quilters in America. And there's some international information in the collections, especially the Quilt Index, but the Quilt Alliance's main project now is called Quilters Save Our Stories, or QSOS, and that's the long format interview. We did one with Nicole Musgrave when we were in Hazard the day before we had our event, but that one is huge. It's 1,200 interviews in the Library of Congress, and it's a way to talk to a quilt maker about not only their quilts and their quilt making, but their lives. So it gives some context to their passion for making quilts, and it's a really valuable collection. It's one of the only collections of oral histories of its kind that have to do with a specific craft. So my job is to lead the organization, similar to your job with the center. Ours is all online, so we don't have a center or a home base that people can visit. All of our projects are online. And the project that you participated in, and we got to document your sister's work, is called Go Tell It. And that is a short form video documentation, quilt documentation project. And the idea is that many, many people own quilts, not just quilt makers. Quilts are given as gifts. They're made as memorials. They are made to comfort family and friends, and they're passed down and they travel. You know, where a quilt was made is not always where it ends up. And the one thing we know about quilts, too, is that they tend to outlive their makers. And so that if that history is not taken down and attached to the quilt as a label, or if a video has not been made, or an audio recording, or someone writing down that history, it's easy for them to get separated. Yeah. And also, it's easy for that history to fade away when, you know, there is no label on that quilt. It just becomes anonymous. And our experience is there are so many quilts without any history attached to them. And I know you have family quilts, and that could happen in your family too. But luckily, both you and your sister appreciate it, so I think that's less likely. But a lot of our work is educational, and we try to put a public service announcement out there with our work, so to speak, of saying, this is an important object. This isn't just a quilt, you know, it's a historical document.
Yeah.
It can have dates. It can have places, names written in it. It can have symbols that are extremely important to you or your culture. There are just so many things about a quilt that we can learn from, and that's why it's important to document them. Yeah. So I've been working with the Quilt Alliance for about 18 years, and I really enjoy my work. And I think one of the most enjoyable parts of my job is going out into the communities and seeing quilts firsthand and hearing people talk about their work, hearing people talk about the quilts in their family that they may not have made, but are so important to them. And, you know, that's what we saw in Hazard, which we feel like that Community Quilt Days project has been one of our most successful projects, because it really, you can see the whole mission being played out and how important it is.
Yeah. Okay. You know, you said the Quilt Alliance has been around for 30 years. You've been working with them for 18 years.
Yeah.
There's a quilt index. With all of that, and then your, travels to different cities, communities, and states, and can you speak to the presence of African American quilters in all that you have seen?
Yes. I think there are many African Americans who are quilting still, and there are not a lot, but there are definitely many very strong and large African American quilt guilds in the country. And I think what you don't see is African American quilters represented in some of the larger shows or guilds. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's starting to be addressed. I think the problem is that majority white guilds tend to think that they're making it welcoming by saying, you are welcome here. We want to have anyone to join this guild who wants to. But it's not thinking about, well, what would make it appealing for someone who does not see themselves represented amongst the current, quilt guild or quilt show? What would make me want to attend? And I think that's starting to be addressed with groups like the Modern Quilt Guild. I think I was telling you about the Modern Quilt Guild is a very large, I don't know how many members they have, maybe 50,000. It's a international guild, and it's mostly virtual, except for they have these conferences called QuiltCon. And this year they partnered with a woman named Lisa Woolfork, who is an assistant or associate professor at the University of Virginia. And she has a podcast and a nonprofit herself. I think it's called, I write it down somewhere. Her nonprofit is Black Women Stitch, and her podcast is called Stitch Please. But she is a very creative, she's an artist herself, and she looked at this problem that, we know there are Black quilters, but why are we not seeing them in the membership of these larger urban or rural guilds even? And she said, I think the problem is that I don't feel like there's a space for me that has been considered specifically for me. That someone has said, what would a Black quilter want to see at a show, or what kind of what kind of space or considerations would they want? And so she asked the Modern Quilt Guild if at QuiltCon they could have an affinity space for African American quilters. Like, this is a lounge that is just for Black quilters. This is a network space or a meeting space just for Black quilters. I think that was just pretty brilliant for her to put that forward, because I think what it did is say to potential attendees, oh, I know that there are going to be other Black quilters there because of this affinity space. And I know that I'll be able to sort of network and create alliances and new friendships, and then go out into the larger space that maybe is a smaller group of people that look like me. And I think that's I don't think that would occur to white quilters or quilt show, organizers, because they don't have that perspective and they don't have that experience of feeling different at a show. And so I think that is going to become more effective and a better strategy, at really thinking about, well, if you want this to be a space that everyone is welcome, you have to do more than that. You can't make it the same space. It's not the same space for everyone. The way that you experience it would be different than the way that I experience it.
Yeah.
Because the system has already been here forever, right?
Yeah.
And how do you change that? So I do think that's changing. I think that there are guilds like the Brown Sugar Quilters in Atlanta. There's a group in Maryland, I'm not sure how you say this, but Uhuru quilters in Maryland. There's a African American Guild in Oakland, California. That's a huge guild. There's a guild called the Heritage Quilters in Warrenton, North Carolina. And they have I'm hoping to invite them to do an interview with us, because I think what they're doing is really unique, not just because it's a majority African American guild, but because they bought a building. They bought an old house, a historic home for their guild to meet in and to exhibit in. That's in this downtown area. They also formed a charity, a giving circle, so that their guild is not just a group of quilters that come together to quilt, but they also are giving charitable donations as a group because of that affinity, which is great. Really cool. Yeah. I think that with young people, you and I have talked about young people, and I was so impressed with your granddaughter when she came to the event in Hazard, because she seemed pretty into it. And I know her other grandmother is a quilter, so we know she's got a history, but she was genuinely interested, and she was taking photographs and wanting to send them to her other grandmother. And I think with that group, with that demographic, younger people, not just Black teenagers, and young people, but all teenagers and young people, there is an entry point for them into quilting and sewing with fashion that seems to be really, over the last 10 years, has really grown. And the other subset of that sewing is cosplay, which is, costume play is it's short for. And you hear about Comic-Con and all these big cosplay conventions. And those have really, there are so many people who are sewing costumes now. So we just had a textile talk with a group of cosplay artists, and it's a huge subculture. I think that's kind of neat that kids are finding quilting cooler than we maybe thought. Because there's a lot of quilts in fashion now.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah.
So I think that I can't speak obviously for a Black quilter, but I would say that they're not waiting for the welcome to come to these majority white guilds. They're not waiting or they're not sitting out of quilting or not quilting. I think that they're completely creating their own spaces and figuring out what they need in larger spaces and asking for it.
I
don't think it's a dying art at all.
All right.
And I think people have that perception maybe because of the I think people always say it's not like your grandmother's quilt. That phrase, it's not like your grandmother's quilt. And first of all, I don't think that's a bad thing. Our grandmother's quilts were pretty spectacular. And many of us who are quilting now are grandmothers. I'm not yet, but I hope to be someday. But, it's just kind of not that limited idea of quilt making anymore.
Yeah. And, when you say it's not a dying art, and, in the Black community, in the rural areas, like around here, I entered into this thing saying it's a dying art.
Yeah.
But as we've gone on, it's like we're discovering that, okay, here's some quilters over here. Here's some quilters over here. Yeah. This person quilts. And so it's a matter of like uncovering these precious gems And then the other thing is getting that younger generation interested, in this. So that's some encouraging news that you've shared.
And I think it's not just when we think about quilting, I think people's minds are their eyes are being opened and their minds are being expanded about what a quilt means. Because there are people like Bisa Butler. Bisa Butler is I'm sure you've seen her work. She's had solo exhibitions at the Art Institute of Chicago. She shows her work in galleries in New York City. She is a Black quilter who works with images of Black Americans. And they are collaged using fabric. She always says, these are all fabric, no paint. There's some line that she always uses to make it clear that these aren't paintings. These are all done with fabric.
Yeah.
And they're absolutely incredible work. And I think being able for a young person or any person to see her work in a museum is kind of mind-blowing. And I imagine that it must be that much more mind-blowing to a Black American to see her in that role and doing that work with that subject matter.
Yeah.
And I think that must be also helping that's an impactful influence on the rest of the culture and the rest of the, community. And then there's people like, there's a woman that we interviewed, Sandra Chandler. She has an Instagram account of showing all the garments that she makes, and she makes a lot of them out of quilts she's made, pieces of quilts that couldn't be used as another quilt. But I follow a bunch of accounts of people who not just making quilts, but they're sewing. And I think that's pretty common right now. Like, I feel like people who quilt are also seeking out other crafts. And I think someone like Bisa Butler, she's just inspiring you. So whether it inspires you to make a quilt or inspires you to go home and pick up crochet or do whatever, but
and that's a important part there. Quilts inspire. In our workshop, the participants that came in, most of them did not quilt. You might have a few that sewed. But when we got through the workshop, they were so inspired that they were buying sewing machines. They were buying material. And, there's a couple that had already made 2 quilts and working on a 3rd.
Yeah.
But it's that coming together, it's something that a quilt will bring you together, inspire you, and that you just spur up that creativity. It's just something about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the parallel to, our work is often in video and sound, and the idea of editing sound and video is sort of like quilting. You're collaging, all of your bits that you record in raw video, then you go in and make your documentary. It's kind of like that with a group quilt too, because you're sort of, it's the object that's left that remains after the community connections happened in person. And I love that.
Yeah.
And you've really facilitated that with your project.
Well, this stories behind the quilt. I mean, it's something that has grown. It's like, watching a child grow up and, taking wings and, and taking flight on its own. It's been an amazing experience. And
well, you made that happen. You created that space for people to come together. I don't know your participants if they knew each other to start with, but I think you did somehow make it, you created your own affinity space about quilting to invite people to come in and meet when maybe they wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah. And talk about history. events going on. I mean, there's been some just amazing, about the local history that's come out. And then in season 3, we're adding we're adding a component to it, and it's going to be called quilting and cooking.
I love it.
We're going to be looking at cultural foods, the foods that, from the area, and what do we have in common? I'm always looking at what do we have in common when we're looking at the quilting between Appalachian culture and African American culture, and we're really, African American culture within the overall Appalachian culture. Yeah. And what do we share in common? I always think that's the bottom line. What do we share in common?
This is brilliant. I love that so much because it's, we can all have some way into that conversation.
Yeah. It is that quilt is a doorway, like you said, into conversation. It's just
even if someone doesn't have, let's say it's a very apt comparison, because I can say, even if I don't quilt, I have quilts in my house, right? And most people, especially Southern people and rural people, have quilts in their family. They may not quilt, but if you are sitting there in a waiting room working on some sewing, someone will inevitably say, "Oh, my grandmother quilts," or "My sister quilts." It's that connection, even if you're not somebody who makes. Same thing with food. You don't have to be a good cook to have an opinion about food.
Right. And we have someone in our workshop, and she said, I don't quilt. I can't quilt. I can't sew, but I can cook.
Yeah. Well, didn't your sister she wasn't a quilter to start with, right?
No, she grew up watching our mom quilt, but she never made a quilt. And I don't think she had that deep desire, but once we got started,
I would never have known that. When she talked about the quilts she made, I wouldn't have known she didn't start out as a quilt maker.
Yeah. She started out as a sewer. She sewed clothes and made children's clothes and things like that, and adult clothes. But yeah, the quilt. They brought out the quilter in her.
Yeah. Talk about inspiration.
Yeah. Well, this has been a good conversation, and I hope you're planning on coming back to Hazard again.
I would love to, because that was just such a great. I felt like people really kind of let themselves be very vulnerable with those stories too. Several of them were very touching, and people were sharing stories that were not just about the quilt. And that's when I think it's most interesting, and it's such an honor that people are willing to do that.
Yeah.
And it's a community spot. That quilt shop is not every quilt shop is like that. I think they aspire to be like that, but they have kind of a really neat vibe going there where everybody seems welcome. And I loved that they were, when I was talking to Miss Katie about her quilt, and I realized they were helping her with the steps that were difficult for her. And it was so sweet. And why wouldn't they? Look, she's just an incredible, sweet person who's, what an open mind for someone of that age, and just adventurous.
Yeah. And, one thing about the staff at the quilt shop, they make house calls. They've been to her house, a couple of times to help her with something, and I'll probably call them to my house to help me with something on my sewing machine. But they make house calls.
I've never heard that. That is the sweetest thing.
Yeah, but
they're so giving of their time.
They're like a community water hole.
Yeah.
Or they have the environment of like a community barber shop or hair shop where everybody comes in and the conversation that takes place and so forth. It's a welcoming place. So
that's a great comparison. I love that.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I can't wait for season 3. I love the cooking idea. That's going to be really cool.
Yeah, we're going to have fun with it, and actually bring food in. We're talking about those cultural dishes, and we're going to bring them in, and everyone's going to share it.
Oh my gosh!
So it's going to be.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah. All right, but Amy, it's good talking with you. Thank you so much, and we'll hopefully see you next year.
Yes, I'm looking forward to get the planning started so we can do that.
Yeah, this is interesting. Wonder how I could make a modern, because there's the rivers. At least it looks like river.
No doubt, that's what it is.
It's a river, and
the bridges.
This even looks almost like the triangle. Doesn't it?
Well, you could write triangle. You could put Main Street.
It could be,
Yeah.
But you got the Central Business District over here, and that's interesting. I have to keep that in mind. I might be able to incorporate that somehow. We don't have a bus depot anymore, but City Hall, courthouse, post office used to be downtown. Interesting.
So, we know, Vivi, you told us last year that you're not a sewer, you're a cooker.
I'm a what?
You heard me.
You see, I played off, didn't you?
So, Em told everybody last week that we're going to take turns volunteering if you feel led to do so, to fix a dish. Not necessarily like a full-blown meal, but maybe a pot or something. And like Miss Katie brought cornbread tonight because she thought somebody was bringing soup beans. So, be thinking on that. But you can still help press and all that kind of stuff.
I might bring some vegetable soup.
All right.
I picked some for Bruce and Mary.
So
the whole thing was vegetable soup.
So when you think about Appalachian food, what do you think about? Like what was it that you grew up with that one of your mom's best dishes would y'all always look forward to when she cooked?
Shoot, I can't tell you because she cooked just about everything. Soup beans was main one.
Soup beans?
Chicken and dumplings was always a treat.
It's gonna be that was one of my favorites.
I'm glad you did pick. Well, no, I ain't glad you picked next week because I'm here.
Sometimes I get it.
This is off key, but we went to Norton, Virginia to a church over where Reverend Parker used to preach, and they had chicken and dumplings.
James said they had a spread, not just
Probably some of the best ones that I've eaten in a while.
Mark said them was the best chicken and dumplings. They put the foot in them chicken.
So you could tell, and it's got to do with what they're in Virginia, African American truck.
Were they like flat?
No.
Okay.
No.
I
You know how
like
they had, you could tell that they had made their biscuit dough. You could tell that was, right.
I felt like a glue mountain.
That was, that was the original, close to the original chicken and dumplings that I've eaten. But Mother used to make her dough and make them flat and roll them out.
So were they like
dropped?
Dropped. Okay.
You could tell they were dropped.
Mama did both.
You could do the drop chicken, the dumplings. After you do yours, Miss
You eat
Katie.
that?
I don't like chicken and dumplings.
I love chicken and dumplings.
I like the chicken, but I don't like the dumplings.
That sounds, from Miss Katie being the eldest, and she said, I don't like chicken and dumplings.
I never did like. My mama would give me some chicken and put some little gravy on it, but I just never did like the dumplings.
The dumplings.
I don't know, they seem like roll to me.
There's something about wet bread.
Actually, that's what it is.
Wet bread.
Yeah.
because when I worked at the place where I used to work, place where I worked in Lexington, they got to the point where they made us work through lunch, but we would bring in stuff to eat, or they, do carry out for us. And I fixed chicken and dumplings one time. This one girl, she was a black girl. She said, "I'm not eating those. I don't like wet bread. I just can't do it." Well, she tasted them and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought I would like wet bread."
Right. Wet bread, I never referred to it. It was just like,
A lot of people would make them out of biscuits, biscuit dough.
they do now.
Yeah.
They do. They do.
because they don't like
now.
rolling the dough and doing all that. It takes time, but it's relaxing to me. This makes me think about when I was growing up helping Mama. And I was always, she'd let me roll the dough. Use the rolling pin.
Right, you roll it
down.
and they would knead it.
And she'd let
Knead
me
it down
at the little round biscuit things and do the biscuits.
Your mom would roll hers and get a knife and slice and everything. I'm telling you, the lady was perfect. She'd go in each section was the same length, and then she would roll it out this way, roll out, and everything was the same length. You had a little one, they were all, and then she'd get her broth boiling with the chicken and everything, and you just see her drop them in there.
That's why I did not cook it.
Drop it in there.
Everything had to be. I'm not messing with you.
She was, wasn't she? She really was a perfectionist. She really was. When it came into the kitchen,
peanut butter and jelly came. You should have let Phil brought that peanut butter and jelly.
We might have to do that. That was one of the things that people got sent to school with in their lunchbox.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Oh, down.
peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
I didn't know
Then I learned how to fry them.
Fry them.
Fry what?
The peanut butter and jelly.
Oh yeah.
Like grilled cheese.
You can fry peanut butter and jelly.
Sandwiches.
Yeah.
Sandwiches, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's the first I heard.
Me too, but they do
Yeah,
fry
they're
everything
delicious.
else nowadays.
Yeah, like you do your grilled cheese.
Well, I didn't know
Butter in there.
until I didn't know about the honey, mixing the honey and the peanut butter until Vacation Bible School one year.
Yeah, yeah. We
Big
did
Mama
that.
used to do that.
Yeah, we did that.
Big Mama, whenever she used to, they would put the honey in the.
I was eating a sandwich and I was like, "Oh, this is
Syrup.
good."
Syrup.
I was like, "What kind of peanut butter sandwich is this?"
Put syrup in there.
So it was just
Yeah, it was
peanut
syrup.
butter with honey. That was it.
Butter.
And you mix it.
Yeah,
You mix it.
put butter in.
Or syrup.
Syrup.
Is there a certain kind of syrup?
I mean,
Is it a certain kind of syrup?
no, I
Just
just
you
regularly
regular
had.
pancake syrup?
Yeah,
or
pancake syrup,
molasses
yeah.
or
Now, for a while, that was my, if I craved something, I needed something sweet, I'd go in there and make me a peanut butter and jelly and fry it. It's good. And then if I thought about the syrup, I'd put me a little syrup in the peanut butter. But I would have, if I did the jelly, I wouldn't because the jelly wasn't sweet.
So
It's a good snack.
So peanut butter jelly, a fried peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Do you like butter it, the bread, just like you would a grilled cheese?
Like you do a grilled chicken.
Okay. I'm gonna have to try that for the kids.
Yep.
Now, I use Pam
Yeah.
because I sit off that butter.
Saving the
I do the Pam and put it in there because you don't have to leave it in there really long.
Yeah.
So I put mine, I spray my skillet, my black iron skillet with spray, cooking spray, and I put it in there and flip it.
Yeah. So you really just heating up the bread, toasting the bread. really.
Toasting the bread, that's exactly what you're doing.
Not having to melt anything.
It's a good snack. And it will crave you. If you're craving sweet, it'll help.
I tell you, that is good.
So I've got some patterns for us. I kind of made a few patterns for us to choose from. Is there any particular thing that you guys that we mentioned last night that y'all want to work on with your block?
The last time. Now, I said the
Anything
mountains.
specific?
I said the mountains.
Okay, you got the mountains. Anything that you?
Well, after I got home, I got to thinking about the hills of Appalachia. Start thinking about that, and I got to thinking about my vision. The hills of Appalachian with a log cabin with just trees, and it's showing like going up a hill.
So you want to do a log cabin? Okay.
With trees.
You got your vision for this block. Now let me tell y'all, when we're doing these pictures, we putting the mountains on the blocks, putting the log cabin and the trees on the block, we gotta do applique. Remember what I did with the sunset lamp?
Oh yeah.
Stitching around all the, and what I did actually. Hey, how are you doing? How stitched around the animals and stuff. So I know that's gonna be out of y'all's comfort zone because you've never done it before, but it's pretty easy. Pretty easy. So.
Well, no, I've never done any sewing, so it don't make any difference. I mean, I ain't sewed since high school when we had to sew.
I don't either.
And I ain't so period.
But I know you can do it. I know you can do it. Vivi, you've already.
So okay.
And I bullied Miss Fraser. That's why I passed the class.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we'll have a block.
That's why I passed the class.
We'll have a block. And then we're gonna have to figure out like you did that sun.
You're gonna have to figure out. I can give you like. You want some sandwiches? You want some? Yeah. Okay. I can give you can probably find some fabric, like if you're wanting to do the log cabin, something to make the logs, and then because you'll have to do individual logs unless you find fabric that has.
I was just thinking of the log cabin quilt blocks.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I kind of had a feeling that's what you wanted to do, which is fine.
I thought somebody said like she said log cabin. Yeah, I thought she said log cabin.
Last year. Actually, she said that last year when I asked the question what you thought about when you think about Appalachia, she said log cabin, and she had worked on the quilt block, the log cabin pattern.
Yeah.
So, what about you, Miss Katie? What kind of block you want to work on?
Whatever y'all, I'll just go along with you. I'll be fine with me then. I like it, log cabin though. I like that.
No, that's the ideal.
Yeah, we only need like.
Did you want to do the log cabin? Because I can change mine.
You want to do schoolhouse?
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as I like I said, my thought when I went on was the Appalachian Hill.
Yeah.
The hills of Appalachia. So we can, I just said, schoolhouse, an outhouse. I did mention
I don't want to put outhouse. I don't want to put, and
the stereotype.
Things, I don't want to put the things on there that stereotype us in certain ways.
Right. But I did mention the one room schoolhouse.
Yeah,
so I'll stick with the schoolhouse.
Okay.
Because that was her.
You know what kind of block you want to do? Okay.
Do it differently.
So
put you some soup beans on.
We can.
to put her some soup beans on there.
So what we can do tonight, we can start on the blocks. We'll be having to do some using some heat bond. We'll pick out fabrics for the back to actually bond the vision on too. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh, girl.
You're gonna learn a lot on this quilt, how to do a lot.
Yeah.
And then so the heat bond, you'll learn how to use the heat bond and then how to cut your vision out and so we can iron it onto the actual block. So we'll do that and we'll start from there. And tonight, I guess we can determine how many blocks we'll actually need. So I'm thinking we'll do like 10-inch blocks.
10-inch blocks.
Yeah, instead of 12. Last time I've done 12 black quilts. 10 this time, and I'll have the kudzu in between.
Okay, the sashing. Yeah, so all that we,
So let's look here. I've got some easy. I forget.
Okay, that's a little over 30, so that'd be 3 blocks around, that'd be 3, 6. And that's a little bit over 30, but you can always sash or cut your sashing to adjust that. So you could actually have 3, 6, 9, 12, and then a cornerstone, if you wanted to do it that way.
So yeah, you could do more than one.
Or do a bigger block.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I have a feeling that some of them might not be the same size, so the kudzu would take up.
Yes, you could, you can adjust that, right?
Yeah, so.
And so you could actually do up to 3, 6, 9, 12, and then your cornerstone could actually be a block too, or you can do it like a material, and you can do that.
So, so everything that was on my list won't be on here because we don't need that many blocks. Okay. We only want to pick the best, themes for the Appalachian quilt.
Yeah, mountain is so good.
Mountains, definitely. So, let's look here.
Log cabins are good.
So she is going to do the log cabin, but she's actually going to do the pattern, the quilt pattern to
Quilt
log
log
cabin.
cabin. It's not gonna look like a log cabin.
Right.
Starts out with a little red square.
But it's a traditional
It's Appalachian quilt.
Yes. Yes.
Right,
People
isn't
made
it?
a long time ago, yeah.
Oh.
And it starts out with a little red block in the center. And the red represents home, the warmth of the family, and it's got different readings and things.
Oh,
Then you go out, you go this way with little blocks, and you go across the top with little blocks, and you
Yeah.
go out.
Yeah.
It's real.
That
It's
sounds
beautiful.
beautiful.
That does. Yeah.
All right, so we have I need a 10-inch block, Pam. Let's see.
You want a block?
10-inch square.
A square, yeah. Let's see. This is 12. Do you have a 10-inch?
Oh, you want a template, that's 10 inch.
Just something so we can tell what size we need
Okay, I think I can get
in these graphics, because I know that's too big. This is a schoolhouse. So, but I've also got a different size. Couple of different sizes, probably this size. So this is what we would go by to make the pattern. We would have to, we would heat bond our block, but we'd have to cut this out. Now you can do windows a different color, and you can just cut the square and stitch around those.
There's the 10.
The door, same way. But this up here would have to be done separate. Now it's depending on how, because it's going to do a lot to go in there to stitch in here. So you can do this all in one piece, and then put the bell on top. You know what I'm saying? Like an overlay with the stitch, and I can help you with the stitch. So okay, and this would be separate. All of this right here will be the windows will be stitched, individual windows. Now it doesn't have to be these lines. You don't have to stitch. We don't have to stitch the lines. Okay. Just the squares. Just the squares. Okay. Yeah. All right. So you use your imagination. Right. That's what I'm trying to go there. I can't. And when we don't sew, we don't have to have a doorknob. Right. You don't have to have this step right here. As long as they know. Because all of that would have to be stitched. Is that what you're saying? This is all going to have to be stitched around. All this has to be stitched around. Yeah. So I'm saying you don't have to do the plus sign in the windows. Right. No. Okay. You don't have to do the doorknob. You don't have to do the step. We can make it simple. Okay. You can make it more simple. We don't have to do the bell.
You can use like a button for the
I sort of want the bell. We can do it.
Yeah, the bell.
Yeah, that's and it's gonna be it'll be tedious to stitch around it, but it can be done. Well, because that was the old school. Yeah. They didn't know how to go out or come in without the bell. So what you want to do? Okay. We'll pick out a backing. Okay. And you'll pick out. We'll probably pick out a backing, the same backing for a lot of several of these, but you'll cut through this, and then So it'll be like cutting out your pattern.
You know,
Okay.
something else that just clicked into my brain, looking at that. To me, I know you want it to represent the school,
Mm-hmm.
but with the belfry up over it,
Mm-hmm.
that looks like a church.
It could be.
But it could, you know,
but
it could be a
was meant
school,
to be a
but
school. I
over
have a
here,
church.
then
I
over
got a
here,
church.
yeah, you got a church, got a bell like that, some of them do.
I
But
got
talking
stained
about the
windows.
old schools and things, she could take her a strip of paper, or fabric, about an inch, inch and a half wide, long, put her a bell on it, and have a string coming down it. And that would look like your old time bell that you would ring at school.
You
Would
could.
be another way
You could actually stitch a bell on there. I mean, like a
regular bell. Jingle bell.
You talking about just have a bell?
Instead of stitching a piece of fabric on here that would
Have a bell. Well, can we do that on the quilt?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like we're gonna put it on the bed and sleep under it.
Okay.
It's it's for display.
Display.
Yeah. And like I said last year, this quilt is gonna be so unconventional that we're gonna look at these blocks and you're gonna say, "How's this go together?"
Well, it's not gonna go together.
Match.
Nothing what we just said is gonna match.
But it's gonna come together, and you'll see that it's
gonna be beautiful.
Yeah, because it's gonna speak Appalachia. You know, there's Appalachia is so diverse. You know, these blocks are gonna look so diverse and so different and crazy and wild. But when you put it all together, you'll see the vision.
Yeah, I've seen my vision right here.
What did you find?
That's similar to what I printed off.
Mountain.
Oh, good, she got one. Let's see.
What? Let's see.
So, this is 10. Yeah, that would be the perfect size.
Yeah.
That'll be the perfect size right there. Let's see. Now, if anybody wants to do railroad, I got 3 options. We can do train car. That looks a little elementary, but by the time you cut it out and put pictures to it, color to it and so forth. Or you could do this railroad sign.
Okay, I do the train
You
car.
gonna sew now?
I sold that other one, didn't I? Which you wasn't much to sew.
But now these are your options. So one's easier than the other. So either this, the train cars, or this, or this.
Nah. So if I don't pick none of them, I do the what? Earning?
No, I mean this is an option if you don't have to do the railroad.
block.
Okay, well yeah.
You don't have to do the railroad.
to do that.
That was
She
just
got other
options.
Oh, whichever one's the easiest one for me.
Or this was another railroad, but we could do something with the railroad tracks. So your mountain was similar to what I had printed.
I sure is. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
So, and see, the only thing about the mountains is all you need to do is cut out different colors of shades and just different ways. You know, that's easy.
Yes, that really
Put your little white sun there.
Why do you
and
think
the-
I chose that girl?
You know what
I was thinking about you when I picked that one. I was thinking about myself when I looked it up. So, do you want to use this one?
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Let's see. Let me look at that thing here. Yeah, that's a better size. Also, we had.
I don't want no more choices. I want that one. Thank you.
No, that's it for the mountains. That's the only one I had.
I thought you was giving me another choice.
We talked about hiking. We talked about hiking last year. Last week. So there's one for hiking. I got different sizes. This was the actual log cabin that I had printed, but I figured that you would want to do the actual block. Let's see. Now here's an easy one. Fishing. A lot of fishing. A fish. And you can make a fishing pole, off to the side.
Yeah.
So that would be easy. if somebody wanted to do that.
Then another old timey quilt is the little Dutch doll and the little Dutch boy.
Yeah, I've seen.
Or somebody, so they call them
Here
that.
is the church house.
I go that railroad.
And I actually
The railroad
had
crossing or the
Yeah.
train?
The railroad
some
crossing.
fabric that we really pretty for the stained glass windows. So we got that. Which, I got a few different sizes of that. And then I have an
What you
Indian one
gonna
I'm
do,
gonna
Billy?
do.
What you gonna do? Oh,
Dulcimer,
no, I'm not good at quilting, no.
Dulcimer.
No, me neither.
I'm sorry, I forgot you was over there. I was showing you the pictures. But you can come look at them. And we talked about community and faith. And it don't have to look like this, but this is what I thought about, something simple, because they're putting actual people on there, but this, and they could be, you know, like standing side by side, you know, like 3 here, 2 here,
Oh, that place.
you know.
I think I like a circle because the circles.
I like the circle.
I like the
But I would have to put something in the middle of
in the middle
circle.
of it. Yeah.
Maybe a cross, since we're talking about faith and
A
community.
community,
So
pick your community.
I would put, well, I don't want to put
Is that you,
letters on there,
Phyllis?
because then you got to stitch around all the letters.
Is that
I'm
you?
trying to make it simple since we only have 6 weeks. Well, 5 weeks now. So,
I've seen, one of the relay shirts had, it had hands, circles, just hands all the way around.
yeah.
No, that's my favorite relay shirt.
So that's what I had to start with. So you got the mountains, you want the railroad, you got the schoolhouse. So
Cross the.
the circle,
Yeah.
Railroad crossing, sign, the sign.
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be good size.
Yeah.
So now this, what you would do, you just have a circle, and then you would cut these and crisscross them on there, and we
Stitch 'em
have
on.
to, and that's it. Do the art. That's it. Okay.
You say
That's all
so.
I need. Okay. And let's see, and then we'll let you pick one. Any idea? Let's see, Becky's got the schoolhouse. I don't know what I did with that stapler, that paper clip. Railroad. You want to do the church? Nope. Dulcimer? Or
No. That one.
okay, you want to do the community one, okay.
Yeah.
Huh?
They think hands,
Do
really.
hands?
Yeah.
How big do
That's a
they?
bigger one. So for a 10-inch block, so this would be a size. So if you get hands that size.
10 inch. She
Might be
might
bigger
want to
than
make
this.
hers about 9.5 for the block and then put it on.
Now, how big do they need? It needs to be.
Now, don't they have to even be in a circle? But it could be however you envision it. They could be standing here.
This is too.
It could be 1, 2,
This is
3.
this one here.
Yeah, that's a little small. But it could be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
It's not.
Well, if you did a circle like that,
Cold.
if you did a circle, it would be this size.
Yeah.
I have
one
cold.
Your circle could be 8.5 with your people and put it onto your thing.
Miss Katie.
So we're applicating.
Okay.
So.
Now I can do any of this.
Hmm.
I can crochet anything.
And crochet, yeah. Oh, we'll help. We'll be here to help.
Thank you.
So
What else we got? Let's see.
that was the last one.
Put the bottle right here.
What is
Now, okay, I do have.
Did you put the
I
other
want
one?
to do
I put it
a
in that
basket,
thing right there.
like basket weaving. And my vision for that
It was
was
clean. I just put it
to actually take some
Oh,
strips
okay. I
and
didn't
weave them
see that over
together for
there.
the block.
Thank you.
Like she's doing the log cabin.
Yeah.
Quilt block.
Oh.
That might be better.
Okay. And you don't have to have that up there if you don't want to, but you embroidery, right? You do embroidery?
No, I don't embroider.
You don't
Crochet.
embroider, but you said you cross stitch?
Crochet.
Oh, crochet, okay.
What are these two?
It's just a bigger, different size.
I mean,
I say she can.
One of
I
them.
know, right.
So which one do you want?
Good is.
It's gonna be the easiest.
This is probably a good size for
This is
well,
probably
for,
the easiest.
you'd have to stitch around all of these,
Schoolhouse.
depending on how many you do, so that would probably be easier.
I'll do this one.
On Lower Broadway, and that was
I'll
brick.
do
Cut your
That
parts
was
out,
great.
so you cut that part out.
I never did go
Cut
to
that
one
part,
room
the angles.
schoolhouse, but I
And I
go
have
to
some
my
fabric for
Big Mama's house and
windows.
go to classes with my Uncle
If
Don and
these aren't
Lily.
too big,
And they had a one-room schoolhouse.
that makes them pretty.
They look.
Sunglass
And they
windows.
put stained glass in.
So you can
And
use
it's still
this for the
standing.
windows,
What color
and
was
then we
that
can
though?
find some.
Was that
If you,
You know what?
decide what color you want your church building
Next
to
thing
be,
you could do,
we can use